Hello everyone. So today's video is about the scope of the end of year exams for Sec 2 in 2025 at Hwa Chong. And then I'm going to talk about how to answer reliability questions. I think this is particularly important for those of you who missed the lesson on reliability. Okay, so you can listen to this video first before you start on your source-based question practices that I've set for you, the 4 papers as your September holiday homework. Okay, so in terms of the exam, okay, it's slightly different from last year's paper. Okay, last year's paper had 5 questions for the SBQ section, and then 3 choose 2 for the essay question. Okay, so that would be a total of 7 questions, right? And then it was still going to be 1.5 hours. So this year we are trialing something new. Okay, we are going to reduce the number of questions for SBQ from 5 to 3, and then we keep the essay question. But now, because there are fewer questions here, okay, we expect the quality of the answers to improve, and then also for you to have some time to plan your essay so that you can try to hit 10 marks. Okay, so there'll be 20 marks total for each section, Section A and Section B. Okay, so just to be very clear, source-based question will be Section A, and then essay questions will be in Section B. Okay, so on the right-hand side, you see a list of all the possible areas that you'll be tested on. Okay, so for source-based question, it can be a case study on any of the topics. From coming of the Europeans to Southeast Asia, right? Why did they come? To British intervention in Malaya, how was it done? Okay, why did they select indirect rule? And then subsequently, residential systems implementation, so that transition from a very hardline governance under JWW Birch to a governance that was more collaborative, right, under Hugh Low. And then subsequently the formation of the Federated Malay States under Swettenham. Okay, so all these are things that we have done, okay, earlier on the year, including this 4th section, which is impact of British intervention in Malaya. This one is the activity on planning a learning journey to Malaysia, okay, particularly Perak, right? And then after that, using what you have seen on the learning journey to basically look at what the social, economic, and political changes were, okay, and how thanks to these changes there was the development of plural society. Okay, so the first 4 sections, they all come from textbook 1, and they all were covered first half of the year. Okay, and then we came back the second half of the year and we just covered these 2 sections, Malayan Union and British anti-communist policies. Okay, so this one for Sem 2 content, which is 5 and 6, if you are still unsure, even though I think you won't be, because it's something very recent in your memory, okay, you can look at these 30 pages in the textbook, 144 to 174. All right. As for the rest, slides have been provided, so I don't think that you need further how should I say, you won't need actually further content apart from the slides provided. And for the second half of the year, because I focus a lot more on essay writing skills and then content basically learning reliability skills, so I'm not going to like heavy load you on content. Rather, I think my focus for you would be okay, do you actually spend time understanding the different perspectives, right? Okay, why did the British want Malayan Union? Why did the Malays oppose it? And then why did they then collaborate? okay, against the rest of the races to introduce the Federation of Malaya plan, right? And then subsequently, why do you think that the other races like the Eurasians, Chinese, and Indians would actually accept it? Okay, so all these are perspectives that we have looked at in class, and these are things that you have to look back on as you're revising. Like, do you truly understand how even something okay that seems to be kind of good, right? Like, I'm just centralizing rule under one government in the post-war period, can actually trigger an avalanche of political events, right, leading to, you know, a lot of other consequences that come afterwards. Yeah, now of course, for this anti-communist measures section, I think I would like you to emphasize a lot on revising, you know, the why this Malayan emergency happened, and also the whole like strategy towards anti-communism, right? Like, was it all about hardline stance, strict punishment, relocating people, deporting people, detaining them? Or was it also a lot about propaganda and trying to win them over, win their hearts and minds, with both words and deeds, okay? And now, of course, let's not forget that this all happened within the Cold War, and the US did provide lots of financial and equipment aid to the British in their anti-communist measures, as well as, of course, the lack of support for the MCP, right? Although they were very much also inspired by their big brothers, the Soviet Union and China. Okay, so those things are very, very interesting. And in fact, if you're going to take history next year, you'll be looking at core in greater detail, so it's quite good to start now. Okay, so now we move on to the second section, which is reliability. Okay, just want you guys to know that typically for reliability as a skill, you will need to also have the third paragraph. Okay, the third paragraph is where you do a critical analysis of the provenance, right? You use VAMI to evaluate whether the source is reliable or not. Okay, but for us at Sec 2, because this is still considered a new skill, okay, all you need to do is write 2 paragraphs, which I'll show you in a minute if you still don't know. For most of you, this is just revision, okay? So you just have to write okay, the ISE for the first source, okay, the root source, and then you repeat that process for the source that you're using to cross refer. Okay, so total number of paragraphs needed for this skill is just 2. Let's just give you a few moments to read this message that was posted on a newspaper stand at a grocery store in the UK. Y'all can just read it now. Okay, so what do you think about this message? Right? There's some interesting things over here. Basically, you know, firstly, there's the assumption that if it's a democratic country like the UK or the US, as a matter of fact, Singapore, that everything you read on the news must be in a way factual, right? But the truth is that as long as these news outlets are owned by okay, private actors, then all private actors would actually have certain interests, or they may have certain perspectives, and this interest and perspectives would color the kind of um news that they put out there, right? Yeah, like for instance, if you have someone very conservative owning a newspaper, then they're gonna produce quite a lot of conservative perspectives, right? Whereas if you have someone who's actually more liberal minded, you're gonna have a lot more liberal perspectives. And this is also like okay, I think it's easier for you guys to know, to understand this if it's within the context of something like Disney, right? So initially when the owners of Disney were quite conservative, they used to produce films, okay, like, you know, Marvel films that were quite conservative, right? And some of the conservative notions will be, you know, you have like male superheroes, right? People like Thor, people like Captain America, people like Iron Man, and then they will always have some female sidekicks, but the females are not like the main characters, okay? So this actually comes from the notion that there are certain gender roles that are played in society, and that men, like particularly usually are sent out to war, whereas women are not. So therefore, since superheroes mostly take on, you know, in a way, some kind of uh you know, enforcement role, okay, or in a way militarily guided objectives. So therefore, a male character will be more representative of a superhero in Marvel films, right? Okay, so subsequently, when the shareholders in Disney started to shift, okay, new people came over and they bought over Disney. They realized that they didn't want to be so fixated on the idea that there should only be male superheroes, right? Because they are actually just representing what's happening in reality, you know, a little bit of that seeping into this fantasy world, right? Reality reflects fantasy, fantasy reflects a bit of reality, so that the audience can have a connection to it. So they started experimenting on a few films, right? For instance, there was okay, what's her name? Wonder Woman, okay? And then subsequently there was Wakanda Forever, right? And both of them did really well, even though the superhero leads were female, right? And then subsequently you have okay, sorry, there's some noise going on because there's a renovation going on upstairs, but you can ignore the noise, and if it gets too bad, I will pause for a while, then I'll record it in a few moments, okay? Yeah, so as I was saying, subsequently we had things like Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, right? And then recently we have Thunderbolts, okay, that also had a male superhero lead. Okay, so of course, when I'm talking about these people, you realize that they actually are also coming from small group of billionaires, right? So whether or not you are very conservative or you are more liberal, when you own a company and the company produces things like any form of media, where be it like news, as you can see here, the Sun is as a news media, right? Or they may produce a film, or they may produce a cartoon, okay? They will shape the way these products, okay, this content is being created in such a way that it reflects what they believe, okay, is right, and that opinion may not be reflective of the whole of society. Okay, it may not be even 100% factually reflecting reality, right? So if you can understand the Disney example, then perhaps you can understand the example of news media as well, because news media actually has quite a wide range of flexibility when it comes to the kind of information they want to publish, right? Or how they even get the data that they need to construct that particular news article. Okay, so like for instance, when you guys are doing your HI last year or this year when you're doing your AA, you already saw that, okay, news articles actually are not fully fully unbiased, right? In fact, all of you were working on an AA based on a given source that was 100% biased, right? It had a VAMI, it had a purpose. So therefore, in that kind of situation, when you're reading it, will you just allow yourself to be blindly influenced by what the source is saying? Okay, clearly you won't, right? You will try to look at it through a critical lens and ask, is it accurate or not? Okay, so the final sentence on this, message is please cross-reference everything you read. Okay, so it's a reminder to us that no matter what you read, okay, whether it's in a book, okay, whether it is on a newspaper or it is maybe on a YouTube channel, okay, make sure that you check it against a reliable source, or if there is no reliable source as yet, check it against another source, check it against the third source, fourth source, fifth source, check it against as many sources as you need to before you decide in your heart, hey, that's the truth, okay? And that's also part of cybersecurity, right? It's a part of reducing the chances that you may be believing some misinformation and therefore making wrong decisions about some important things in your life. Okay, so we are going to do a quick reflection now. Okay, what does this image tell you about the reliability of newspapers and what are you going to do to get the reliable knowledge? Okay, so this is what we've done earlier in the year. So for those who've missed out, these are the answers that your friends have come up with. I'll give you a few moments to read it yourself. Okay, once I've finished reading it, so I think you have finished reading it too. Okay, basically you need to cross-refer lah. Okay, cross-refer to sources, particularly those that are non-politically motivated or academically peer-reviewed. So there's a higher chance that they are unbiased. Okay, like for example, if NUS publishes something, Harvard University publishes something, okay, Cambridge University publishes something, a think tank publishes something like IPS, it's a lot more reliable than basically news from the newspaper. Alright, so today, however, we're gonna practice the reliability skill within the context of history and within the context of Malaya after World War II. Okay, so we are not going to check if a newspaper is reliable. No, okay, we are going to check if a historical source is reliable. So let's start. Okay, so this is the first source that we'll be looking at, and then we'll cross-refer to. Okay, actually, we'll be cross-referring to A, right? So the given source is B. So how can you tell? Okay, first of all, let's not go too quickly. Let's look at the question. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions like along the way as you're watching this video and you don't understand, you can just take a piece of paper and write down your questions so that after this, you can just send me a Google chat to clarify, okay? So yeah, study source B, okay, this one. How reliable is it in revealing the state of contentment of the Malays in post-war Malaya? Okay, so just give you a few moments to read this. You can pause the video, okay? If you feel like there's not enough time, I'll just be quiet for a while. Let you read source B, okay? All right, assuming that you have already read source B, okay, you can now make an inference about the state of contentment of the Malays. Do you think that the Malays were contented? Okay, yes or no? Okay, I hope you said no, okay, because you can see here that he is actually not happy, right? And you can tell it through certain words that he uses, right? Like, I was bound to accept the advice of the resident, but nevertheless, I was a ruler. Okay, and then he said, I'm now invited as a member of at an advisory council with the governor assuming the function which rightly belongs to me. Okay, so these words rightly belong to me. okay, are actually very telling as to how upset the Sultan is regarding this current state of affairs, right? Imagine I say something like, hey, this rightly belongs to me, but you took it away from me. What does it mean? Okay, it means that he feels like something has been stolen. And when you have something stolen away from you, okay, would you feel like it's justified, right? Would you ever feel like it's justified? Of course, this is very different from getting your iPad stolen, okay? This is something that is part of his identity as a Malay leader, right? Sultan Aziz. And if you know that like the whole way in which someone inherits power and then inherits that status is really by blood, right? So he inherited it from his father, he inherited it from his grandfather, so on and so forth, all the way to the very, very first sultan, right? And in our recent activity in class that some of us did, the one with Melayu to Bumiputra, right? That reading that you have read, you realize that sultans have existed, okay, even prior to um colonialism, right? So we're looking at this legacy that has lasted hundreds of years, I would even say maybe 1,000 years, and then ending right here, right now in 1946, okay? So it's not like getting your iPad stolen, it's getting your whole historical legacy stolen. And clearly, when someone is robbed of something that they think belongs to them, they won't be happy about it. So clearly, this is a very straightforward source to show that he's unhappy. Okay, so and of course, in history, what we like to do is that we extrapolate, right? We look at one source and we try to make an inference, and we see if the inference can be verified, can be supported by other sources. And after looking at like countless sources, maybe we look at 100 sources, we can conclude that yes, okay, actually, all of them agree that the Malays were unhappy. Then that would be an inference. Okay, so let's look at the next source above. This is the source that we are going to cross refer to see if they are happy or not. Okay, so I'll just give you a few moments to read it first. Okay, so you can see here, okay, a rather violent incident. Okay, it's a massacre that took place in 1945, and over here you see Malays attacking Chinese. All right, and the Malays actually killed women, children, and men. And while they buried the men and women, they did not even bury the children. Okay, the children were simply thrown down the well. Okay, and when they were arrested later, they claimed that these murders were done because of first, okay, because they were first intimidated by the Chinese. Okay, and that of course gives us a clue as to why he had to get rid of they have to get rid of the bodies of the children, because children are innocent, right? They cannot be blamed to have political agenda. So if the bodies of the children are found, then perhaps the alibi or the excuse for committing a crime would not have been valid. Which goes to show that like sometimes when people do something that is not right, they have excuses and they try to eliminate evidence of their own faults. Okay, so once again, Okay, so once again, that becomes something that we have to consider later on, in Sec 3 and 4, right? That if someone is defending themselves in court against a particular crime, criminal charge, right? Would what they say be always believable? Okay, would what they say be reliable? Okay, likely not, right? Because people always have that like desire to defend themselves and okay, try to escape criminal charges. Okay, but nonetheless, that is not relevant today because as you can see here, we are just trying to do cross-referencing. Okay, so here you see the answering technique, okay? What we need to do is to first evaluate the given source, right? Okay, so these questions, of course, have been set by me in such a way that it is the most basic, the very simplest way, the most basic kind of questions, right? I'm going to change this to, is it reliable? Okay, so the criteria is already given. Where all you need to do is to decide whether the source is revealing discontentment or contentment. Okay, so this one is clearly discontentment, right? Because as I said, they feel like they have had their whole historical legacy being stolen. Okay, and then for source B, okay, if it supports what source for source A, if it supports what source B is saying, that means it's reliable. Okay, if it rejects or it challenges what source B is saying, then it is unreliable. Okay, so in this case, it's support, right? So you'll say Malays were discontented. Okay, so when it supports, it's reliable, right? And we're just replicating the process of what would have happened in like a real historical inquiry, where you're going to look at not just two sources, but you'll be looking at multiple sources, and the more sources out there agree, okay, the more reliable the information is. Okay, and if there is half-half, then you know that okay, maybe this is something that is shaped by bias, and then there may be different kinds of perspectives. Okay, so in this case they are discontented, and you can see this through the acts that they have committed, which were rather violent and radical, right? Which actually reveals that they were very discontented, right, with the state of affairs, because people who are contented will not resort to such crime. Okay, let's move on to looking at the next set of questions. Okay, so for this, we are looking at the state of contentment of the Chinese instead of the Malays. Okay, so you can pause the video here and read both sources first. Okay, then yeah, let's continue. So do you think that source C shows that the Chinese were contented or discontented? Okay, so clearly they are discontented, right? Because they were massacred, right? But this time not by the Malays, but by the British. So this is one thing that you need to know, okay? After the Second World War, the massacre and the persecution of the Chinese doesn't just end. Okay, as we all know, the Chinese were persecuted by the Japanese, right? And that sort of behavior was taught to the Malays. Okay, that it's okay to kill the Chinese. The Chinese are worthless people. Okay, and then subsequently, of course, during the emergency period, because they actually caused a real military threat. Okay, so we know that during the early phase of emergency period, many of them were actually killed as well. Okay, so you won't like that you're being killed. So clearly, this would be a no. They are discontented. And then you can see also here, this was before the implementation of the hearts and minds policy. So the the new villagers were actually quite miserable. Okay, so the format would be exactly the same as before. Okay, so it's reliable in informing us that Chinese were discontented. Okay, give evidence, explain. And then reliable as is supported by D. Okay, give evidence and explain. Okay, you can read that in your own time. It's quite easy. And last but not least, I gave one more source, which is about the Baling talks. You can pause here to read it. Okay, and the question is, how reliable is it in revealing the state of relations between Malay and Chinese? Okay, and I'm not actually requiring you to use any source, okay, any source in particular, so you can pick from A to D which source you want, okay? So perhaps what you can do is to pause the video now and see if you can write out the answer. Okay, of course, you can see a little bit of it over here already, right? This is going to be an unreliable exemplar. Okay, so see if you can find another source that is within the 4 sources that are provided but disagrees with what you see in this source. And then later resume the video and see if you can compare your answer with the given answer if it's correct or wrong. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. Yeah, assuming we've already done that, okay, some students, right, actually manage to get both, get the other side as well. Okay, so I'm gonna change the question. Sorry, is it reliable? Okay, strictly speaking, if I ask how reliable, it requires to give both sides. Okay, but in Sec 2, and then at the end of your exams, just take note that no matter how the question is being asked, you are only required to give one side. Okay, give one side of the of cross-referencing. Okay, so in this case, we say that it's unreliable. Okay, because I've already selected source A, right? So source A challenges. So I keep my stance consistent. Okay, so source E is unreliable. Okay, source E tells us that the Malays and Chinese got along well. And you can tell this by how all the leaders, right, were actually on the same side, regardless of their race. Okay, but this is unreliable when you cross-refer to source A because you see how the Malays were actually willing to commit very severe crimes of violence against the Chinese. Okay, so that's all for today's lesson. But before we end, I just want to say that there are other ways of asking for reliability, okay, in a question. So if a question asks, the first way is the source reliable? So you will know that it's a reliability question, right? Because the word reliable is in that. But then sometimes they may not use the word reliable, but it could still be a reliability question. Could be a reliability question, yes, it could be. So it will be, can we believe what source A says? Okay, so that's a reliability question. Or we can also say, does source A prove? Okay, and then they will complete the question. Okay, or it could be something like, is source A evidence of, oh no, is source A reliable evidence of, and then put question mark. Okay, and sometimes it's a hybrid question, right? So maybe they'll say study sources A and B. Okay, does source A prove that what source B says is wrong? Okay, So these are all some of the possible ways that reliability can be tested. So I'm just gonna highlight the keywords that you can look out for. Okay, so reliable, believe, proof, and then reliable evidence of. Okay, so don't let the wording throw you off. Okay, they are all actually asking about about exactly the same thing. And also, please take note that you should always use the words that are provided within the question. Okay, so if the question is phrased as does source A prove that what source B says is wrong, the whole question has to be worded in that manner. Okay, so for instance, question 5, right? So you can say source A proves that what source B says about to set that the criteria is wrong. Okay, that's an example of the way to answer. And if it doesn't agree, then it proves that it's wrong. Okay, but if it agrees, then you just put, okay, source A does not prove that what source B says is wrong. Just like that. Okay, so I think that if you feel like this is a little bit difficult, let me just okay, let me just go back to the previous window. Okay, this thing's not letting me toggle. Okay. You realize that if you encounter a question in the exam, right, and it is not inference, purpose, or comparison, okay, then it has to be reliability because for Sec 2 exams, okay, these are the only question types that can be tested now. Right? So just by virtue of elimination, you can infer that hey, this must be reliability. Okay, so I think that this is pretty much what I want to share with you in today's like YouTube. If there's anything that you think I have missed out on, just please Google chat me and I'll do another video for you. Yeah, because this is really the last leg of the race, really, right? This is the last lap. And when you come back from the September holidays, don't worry, okay? We still have weeks 1 and 2 to go through the 4 source-based questions papers that I have set for you as homework. Okay, what else can you do to prepare? Like typically, like when I was a student like you guys, I would actually do like mind maps, right? So this is something that you can prepare. You can prepare notes. You can also do it as like a class effort where you divide yourselves out into 6 groups or 5 groups, and each group tackles one particular topic and then share that Google Docs. All right, so because there's renovation upstairs, so I'm not going to continue this video. But once again, thank you guys so much for your Teachers' Day gifts, and I hope you guys have a wonderful break up ahead. See you guys when school reopens. Bye bye.